Okay, so in today's video, I have another stationary look at a meeting style notebook. Today, I picked up a Nakabayashi Logical Prime ringed notebook that's in a meeting style format. So let's take a look. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, this is the Nagabayashi Logical Prime ring notebook. And, the one I got is a gray cover, and it's a left side ring, the way the paper's oriented inside, but the logo is printed on the horizontal. This is called the special edition notebook there. And then on the back, it just has A5 and then, more thorough description in Japanese that I cannot read. But I picked this up from the Gentleman Stationer this last weekend, and this is a meeting style notebook. If you've seen many of my other videos, you know I use the Nemesine and also the Rhodia meeting style notebooks. So I thought this would be a good comparison to try something new, a different paper and a different format. So let's get into it. Just showing the format here. And let me fix that a little bit. Fix that exposure slightly. Okay. So going into the format, you've got the standard kind of meeting style header, a date field, a contents field, and then another block. This one's labeled number. It's got a light gray grid. Now there are some different color options. There's a green that's a 7 millimeter lined, a brown cover, which is a dot grid, a blue cover, which is a 6 millimeter lined, and then white, which is blank pages. So if you had multiple, you could use the covers to determine which which pages you're going to be dealing with. So what I did in prep for this is I wrote down kind of a mixture, and I'm going to cover up some of this for the time being with an index card so I can kind of show what I discovered in doing an initial test. So this, I used my pen from my recent video, the Pens by Pasquale Merlin, which is the custom pen, and it has a Bach fine nib on it. And the ink I have in there is the Mont Blanc for BMW. And the first thing I noticed is, that ink settled in pretty well on this paper. It was fairly absorbent. You can see it's a meeting notebook style, 6 millimeter dot, or I guess this one's the grid, not dot grid. But what I did is for testing the dryness and the absorbency, is I did just a cross and immediately swiped across with my finger. So I have 0 seconds, then I did one at 5 seconds and one at 15 seconds. So, the paper dries fairly, or the ink dries fairly quickly on the paper. But then as I went to the next pen that I had sitting here, the Diplomat Viper, you can see that ink had a very different dry time. It took much longer for that, and I was curious if that was a diamine thing or other ink, so I continued down. A rollerball, it dried immediately. You can see it. There's not any semblance of a swipe on either of those, so I didn't even bother doing a 15-second one for that. And then I got to my Asvine that has the Yovo extra fine nib on it, and the ink in the Roshizuku spread really wide. You can really see, and I'll film another clip and overlay it as I'm talking here. But you can really see how the Roshizuku word here is, it's messy. The line did not hold up, and it dried by 15 seconds, but I was really shocked to see how it spread. So I grabbed another one of my pens that I had sitting here, my Opus 88 demonstrator, that has a different color of a Roshizuku in it, and it was the same thing. Both of those are Yovo extra fine nibs, and the ink spread. So then the next step I was thinking, is it a Roshizuku thing? So then the final pen I used was the extra fine version of the first pen. So this is an Asvine with a Bach extra fine, not a fine, but it had diamine ink. And you can see that the line did not spread in the same way, but definitely this paper is preferential to certain inks just from this initial testing. So what I wanted to show from a comparison is I wrote all of the same things onto my Nemesine meeting notebook that you would have seen on the channel before. And I wanted to just kind of show side by side, make sure I have this lined up in here, and I'll also do a close-up where I can kind of handhold and show some of the side by side. But you can see how the ink is definitely behaving differently on the different papers. The Nemesine is like a coated paper. This doesn't really have the same kind of coated texture to it, and I'm sure that comes into play, but you can really see, like with the Iroshizuku inks and the extra fine Yovo nibs, I mean, that's a night and day difference. Let me see if I can hold these two up and show that side by side. Yeah, so that's lined up pretty well, as long as I can hold this steady, just to show how different that ink spread is between the papers. Same pen. So if I was choosing this to use this on a regular basis, I definitely think I would have to be more selective with which pen and ink combinations I used, because if I grabbed one of my Yovo, extra fine Yovo, or anything with a Iroshizuku, really, I don't think it would write like I'd expect. So this, I would have to, limit my options, or just be aware of that. So I'm grabbing the correct pen out of what I currently have inked, versus, something that's not going to perform as well. Now, with this being a meeting note, and, the way I use these, nothing in these notebooks is going to be something that has to last forever. It's normally lasting during a project or something like that, and then it would be, the page could be ripped out or reused or become a testing page or something like that. But I'm sure there's some people who use meeting notebooks in a much different format where they need to keep those records. That's just not how my use case is. But I found it very interesting, that normally a Iroshizuku for me is always a well-behaving ink. It generally works well on most all the papers. So this is one of the first ones I've really come across where that was the outlier, where it did not perform well, and then other inks and pen combinations worked great. Even and just to add to that, you can see even on the Nemesine, the rollerball with an immediate swipe, it actually had a little bit of bleed, so it did not dry immediately like it did on the Nakabayashi. So I just found that interesting. This meeting style notebook is so commonplace now that, there's more makers releasing it with that kind of header and then whatever the ruling on the page. So I just thought that was interesting and wanted to show that. And let me do some actual just live writing here to kind of show exactly how much that spreads. And I'm going to do on the back of this first sheet, because then we can also look at the show through. Because looking there, the only ones that really kind of showed through was that Opus 88 with the Iroshizuku Rika there. So I'll grab this pen here. This is the Pens by Pasquale. Let's see this. Nakabayashi. Just do some swirls around. And no show through or anything like that on there. And then I'll grab one of the Yovos to just show. Grab this one here. This is the Asvine J16. And this has the Cyangyo in it, that new Black Cherry Iroshizuku. And, you can see the letters spread more on the word there, and the slightest little bit of show through, but I think writing bigger, it's less susceptible, but if you were doing a small writing with the Yovo, you can see as it starts to dry, it's just soaking in more, so it is making those thicker lines. So just something to be aware of if you were to pick up one of these notebooks, if that's something you might need to contend with. And I'll also just do the final with a diamine ink. So you can see that that is not spreading out in the same way. Let me get this up here. So you can see that it does not spread out like it does with the Orochizuku, and then the Mont Blanc ink also is not spreading out. So yeah, very interesting to see that. But this is one, since it's a relatively inexpensive kind of meeting style book. I think this was like $7.50 for an A5 size. I'll still be able to put this to use, and then as different inks come out, I'm about to start the process of reswatching a lot of my inks onto coloring cards to put in a Rolodex. And as I do that, I might do some swatches on this paper to see how it reacts, since it was more particular about which ink it wanted to cooperate with. So yeah, that's the Logical Prime Special Edition from Nakabayashi. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this video about the Nakabayashi Logical Prime. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this paper reacts over time with different inks, as I showed in the writing samples, that it's one of the more particular papers that I've come across so far, as I've been trying to branch out into different stationery, specifically Japanese stationery. Have you used this notebook before? Are you seeing a similar response with different inks? If so, leave a comment. I'd love to see if that's something that's particular to this one, or if that's something that's common among this paper line in general. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can see new videos as they're released, and thanks for watching.